Welcome to Dr. Lotte's Science with Soul, the podcast that transcends the boundaries between science and spirituality. Prepare to be uplifted, transformed, and awakened to create a path to healing your own life physically, emotionally, and spiritually by bridging the gap between science and soul. Are you ready to rewrite your energetic blueprint and break free from inherited patterns? Hi, I'm Dr. Lotte Valentine, physician, psychic medium, and ancestral healer. And I'm excited to introduce my new self-paced online course, Healing the Mother Wound, Rewriting Your Emotional and Energetic Blueprint. In this transformative journey, we'll explore how ancestral imprints shape your emotions, relationships, and a sense of self, so you can release old wounds and reclaim your power. Your healing begins now. Step into a new paradigm of freedom and wholeness today. Welcome to Dr. Lotte Science with Soul. Today's guest is Karen Joy. Before finding her true calling as a past life and life between lives regressionist, Karen Joy spent 20 plus years as a registered counseling psychologist. She has written several books, including her latest, Lost Soul, Wise Soul, and hosts a podcast, Exploring Past Lives with Karen Joy, where she interviews people who have recalled their past lives. Her joy is helping people release from their past lives and current life traumas that are holding them back from living a fulfilling life. So welcome, Karen. It is such an honor to have you as a guest today, and I can't wait for you to share your knowledge with the listeners.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here with you, Dr. Lotte.
So you were a psychologist counseling people for decades. What caused you to pursue a spiritual vocation?
That's a great question, because I was a therapist, a registered psychologist. And in the beginning, when I started psychology, I was an evolutionary psychologist who just believed in, hard things like pets, nothing beyond beyond the physical. And what happened was, a scientist friend of mine, when I was about 50, I remember in about 2000, a scientist friend of mine introduced me to a book. He lives in America. He lived in the San Juan Islands. He'd come out to Australia our summer to avoid that cold weather up there. And this one day I met him at the museum, and he said, "You've got to read this book, Karen. It's changed everything." And I said, "Okay, I'll read it." And it was called He Revisioned. And in it, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it was talking about a possibility of a God principle, because some of the experiments that they explored in that book showed that evolution wasn't the way we thought it was. There wasn't random selection at all. It was, they put little organisms in a petri dish and they watched how they evolved, and they didn't randomly change. It seemed to be directed, the change, depending on the solution they put in the petri dishes. So I just thought it was like the rug was just ripped out from underneath me. I thought, well, there's something else going on here. And that's what the book was about. There's something else. And they called it the God principle. And so I read 140 books that year, and sometimes some I read 3 times, because I'd read one of them and think, "Oh, that's rubbish," throw it away, and then go back to it later, as I was gradually changing my view about how the system worked. And that's been a decades now obsession, I guess you would say, to understand what's really going on. So I was a psychologist then, and then just after I started to understand that there's more than the physical, and I was still trying to work out what it was, I had my clients started going into past lives. And that was very strange. So I would ask I would ask them to go into their emotion about what the issue was they were having, you know, whatever it was, and put them in the situation that they'd say that they would be struggling with. For example, one client, we'd done a lot of exploration of her current life history, and we got to the stage, I think I said to her, so what would happen? First of all, what was she doing? She was helping people all the time, to the detriment often of her family. And her husband was actually at this particular session that I had with her. And he said, she just has got to help. She's obsessed with helping people all the time. And he felt neglected, and the daughter felt a bit like neglected as well. And so I said to her, so what would happen if you didn't help them? And I said, just close your eyes and tell me what that would feel like. And she said, they would die. And I said, okay, we're going to go into that. How would they die? What would happen? And then she had this image of being in a village. The marauders were coming. Somebody said the marauders are coming. And she was an elder in the town, or village, I suppose it was. She put them in a barn, hid them up high in the barn, under straw and everything. And of course, the marauders came and killed them all. And she felt totally responsible. And once we released that, worked through that, and came to terms with it, a lot of tears, a lot of emotion, she was fine. She was more balanced on this particular issue. So that was the first one that happened. And then it started happening. And I hadn't formally studied any hypnosis, but then I did. And I also studied then past life regression, life between life regression. And it was just so satisfying. It was just so worthwhile. I gradually shifted. I had both businesses going at the same time, psychology and this, but the psychology, I lost interest in that because the regressions were so fascinating and so almost instantly liberating for people. So that's what happened.
Yeah. So how do they, so people that carry the trauma, how do they then get free from that?
It's interesting because it's like they have to come to terms with it. You know, in life we have challenges and we need to come to terms with them. And in the past lives that come up in a session are the ones where they haven't come to terms with it. So they could be like a very violent death or difficult death, or a death where they haven't let go fully, like children. I've got to look after my children. So it's like they've died, they're sort of stuck. I don't know if stuck's the right word, but they can be stuck in some sort of nothing place, I guess, or resting place. I don't know what you would call it. And I think what happens, we activate that or they activate it too in their current lives when they get triggered by something that's related. Like if somebody asked this client before for help, she would have to help. And so there's some sort of trigger that is compelling for them and whatever. Yeah, so that's what happens. It's triggered. It's like they have a feeling and that triggers the past life sense. So, you know, if somebody's died over a cliff, I've had quite a few of them lately, they've died falling over a cliff in some way or a fall. Well, then if they go near a cliff or near even a high building or see somebody on TV falling, that will trigger trauma, like the trauma will come back. Does that explain it?
Yeah. No, it's fascinating. I mean, it explains why all of a sudden, you know, people get sick or all of a sudden certain things happen and then it takes a few years for it to sort of work its way out or to heal, right? So do you ever see people that are struggling with, you know, physical disease and illnesses that are related somehow to past life?
I haven't got an example of that in my mind at the moment, but yes, I have. I've had a lot of illness last year myself, several operations, and since then I have had a couple who've come. But yes, I can remember one example where a girl came in and she just mentioned that she had 3 accidents on a knee, the same. Is that the same knee? yes, she said the left knee, say it was. And what I said, okay, do you want to heal that? And she said, yes. I said, well, we're going to go into, and it's very easy to put somebody in when they've got that trauma. So they just go into the feeling of, oh, there's something wrong with my knee, the feeling of it and the distress about it. And usually that comes up straight away in the past life. I don't know why, maybe because we've made that intention. And it'll come up. And in this one, she was a young girl and she was looking out the window of a high house, sort of an attic, I think, where she was perhaps living, and she fell and she hit her knee, and it was the same knee. Yes, so I have had some of them. I've even had one girl who went for an operation, because there was some growth inside her, and when the surgeon was really annoyed because when he told her it was there from birth, she had it at birth, and when he went in, it wasn't. It was quite annoyed. She came back to see me, and it was stopping her from having a child. She wanted to have a child, and so she had a baby after that. She sent me pictures.
Right.
So yes, all sorts of things like that do happen. Yes.
Do you find that, do you know anything about children? Do they remember our past lives more than adults?
Well, I think they do. I mean, there's plenty of research on that, as you know, with Dr. Stevenson.
Yep.
I had his books here. They're huge with so much information in them. But I don't do children. The work that I do, the past life regression and the regression, I did do a couple of children early, but they don't get a lot of information. Their life is still unfolding, and they're not ready. You know, they're on their path, but they're not ready to be looking back yet, I think. So I usually only do adults. Occasionally you get these younger ones, so in their 20s, who are very aware, and they're quite a delight to do. But I don't do anybody under 18. So, but I do believe that definitely that children seem to remember their past lives quite often. Yeah.
Right. I know, I can't remember what country it is. If it was, I read the Stevenson books, the big one. I mean, it was really thick back, I don't know, maybe 10 or 20 years ago. But I can't remember what culture it is, if it's Israel or one of those countries over there, that said that typically around the age of 3, the kids remember past lives. So it's kind of part of their culture to ask the children what they remember, versus in this, in the United States or in Sweden where I grew up, that's not part of the culture. So we're not really informed at all about our past lives, and unless you somehow stumble upon it later in life, like I have, and start understanding the impact that our past life have on our current life.
Well, in India, of course, there's, with the Hindu religion, that happens a lot, I know. Yes. And there's a book written about Dr. Stevenson's work. I wonder if that was it, because he went to those countries a lot.
It was all about, I think the research was in India, the book I read.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I have all sorts of people coming to see me who well, they don't all come to me. I see them in different parts of the world through my Zoom, and from all sorts of cultures that you wouldn't expect, wouldn't necessarily expect to, like people who have been Muslim even, that have come sometimes. So yes, I've had Muslims as well. So all sorts of different people with different religious backgrounds are opening up to the possibility of past life existence.
Yeah. In your book, The Lost Soul, Wise Soul, talk about the lives of people have lives as perpetrators and victims, that sometimes are, pretty dark. Is there a reason you included those kinds of stories in your book?
There is a reason, because when they came to me and they were just so illuminating and compelling, that they started to explain to me why I myself had the experiences I'd had, and it also explained to the client why they had the experiences they had. So most of them came in a fair bit of a despair. There wasn't a lot. I really think they were sent to me specifically to write this book, actually, because I don't get heaps of them, and it's in the way that I got these particular people who are in the book, the clients, because we went right through to a degree from their beginning of their soul journey through the darkness and then finally getting freed into the light. So that sort of showed me how our journey usually unfolds. I wouldn't say it's always the same as this, but we start off as young souls and gradually get more experience, and then we can go down the dark path. And quite a lot of people do go down the dark path. So not all, though. Some people come from other planets and they don't seem to be, they seem to be lighter, and they make that decision that comes to them, like, will I kill or will I not kill? Like, they get that moment where they might feel very angry, and they turn away. But these particular people, they didn't. They went down, right, the dark path. And that is just very interesting how that happens. And one of them had a guide who explained that it was a human decision. Those decisions to kill, we don't plan them. We plan our lives. We don't plan specifically to kill, but it's an option. Mm-hmm. And so then in that moment, if they do, I'm just using an example, kill, there's other terrible things you can do, but let's say that they have made that decision and then they're set on a particular path, and they usually go down further, and then eventually they have to come out, and they're often very stubborn souls as well, so it's hard to get them out. Yeah, so that's why I included it, because it's just so interesting.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I mean, we know that we've all been the bad guys and the good guys in the past life. What do you think about, people that were, let's say, in a past life, they did something wrong, like you were talking about, and that person felt guilty for having all those people getting killed. Are there times when, we live in this life to pay off sort of the karma of that past life when we did something wrong? Is that a choice that we make, you think, when we incarnate into this life and say, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to struggle with this so I can pay off, my debt of doing the wrong thing in one of my past lives?
Well, they say there's no punishment. Excuse me. Nobody punishes us except ourselves, and I believe that's the case. But I think we're very curious. Why do we decide to come in lives and sacrifice ourselves, for example? Well, that might be the reason, because we feel in that debt, I guess you could say. But that's us. It's not anything from above. They don't really want us to suffer at all. But if we choose that and then we feel that we'll be able to free ourselves from that, I think that's why we might do it. It's our personal choice. A couple of things I was thinking of there that, look, I think it's very deep in us, this transactional side of things, where we've done something wrong and then we feel we need to do something to pay it off. Because just recently I was at a place here where I live in Australia called Tin Can Bay, and it's a place where there's dolphins and you get to feed the dolphins. And I noticed that one of the dolphins came along had this sort of thing on its nose. It had a something, and I thought, has it got a growth, on its nose? And then they explained that it was a gift, because we were going to feed them fish. And so the dolphin came with a gift to give. It was like, could be coral, something from the bottom of the ocean, that he comes and gives to the people who are looking after these 8 dolphins that were there to be fed. And they come every morning, like the same time every day. They're wild dolphin. And I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? That's how deep it is inside us, that even the dolphins are bringing a gift. So this reciprocity sort of thing is very deeply ingrained in us. So I think it's a choice
Yeah.
to do it. It's
Uh,
not punishment.
you're right.
Does that make
Yes.
sense?
You're right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. It's like, that's my understanding too, that we, it's our choice that we come back to sort of set the energy straight, or the energy of the universe straight, by experiencing these things. So, I mean, why is there so much pain and suffering on earth? You
You
know?
know, that's so interesting too, because a client recently was upset about other people suffering, and she asked her guide, what should she do about that? What should we do? And the guide, at first I said, I suppose we have to ignore it. We should, we have to let that happen. And she said, no. The guide was called Joy, and she was the funniest spirit. Often they are very funny and joke and laugh and everything. Anyway, she was a funny spirit, but she said, what should you do when you see suffering in the world, people suffering? She said, first of all, there's no suffering. It's a choice. She said it's a choice to suffer. And that's another issue, I guess. And then second, she said, when you see people suffering, or what you think is suffering, she said, your job is to feel joyful for them. And like, that was just so counterintuitive that I'll say, really? Like, she said, yes, because they're on their path. They've chosen it. Feel joyful for them. Now, when you
Right.
look at what's going
Yeah.
on in the world, that is
Right.
very challenging.
I mean, I understand. I mean, at the same time, it's counterintuitive, because we said, why would I choose to suffer all these years and go through all these trials and tribulations? But at the same time, I think that, I mean, there's so many things that is in your astrological chart. So I know that the astrologers that I've worked with say, "Oh yeah, I can see your near-death experience. It's right here. Yeah, that date. I can see it. Oh yeah, and then you were sick, and then you got well around age 44. Yep, that's when you paid off your past life karma. That is,
Okay.
and it's kind of interesting, because you look at this astrologer and you say, wow, all that is really in my chart, because the chart is our movie script. That's how I look at it. It's just, if
Wow.
you're not an astrologer, then like, I'm not. So I have to rely on other people reading my chart. But it's really interesting, because that whole thing that you were just talking about, how we incarnate to have these experiences, and then try and be joyful for the people that are experiencing hardships of some kind, because it is part of their path and part of their incarnation. I mean, how much control do we really have over our life? I mean, what I'm going to eat for dinner, maybe, but I don't know. It just
Well,
seems that it's all a movie script in the end.
that's so interesting too, isn't it? Because that's what like I said before, a human decision of what's planned. I think of it as we make plans, right? We make plans for holiday, then we go on holiday, and sometimes the plans work out, and sometimes they don't. The way we expected them to. And I think that's similar. We make a plan that we're going to come here and do certain things, and sometimes it works out for us, and sometimes it doesn't. I know that's true because I've had
Yeah.
too many clients who've had lifetimes, for example, of being an alcoholic, and then they go back to the last life when they died in the gutter, and they're still struggling with alcoholism, and they definitely want to get past it. So I remember one particular client who had the alcohol problem, like really deep alcoholism, and there were some personality things that were adding to that, adding to making him more prone to that particular problem. And I spoke to him years later, and he said he was going okay, but he was still struggling with it. His wife had stayed with him. So some things had been planned, for example, for his wife to stay with him. And that was happening. She was tolerating it and helping him. People love fulfilling their plans, I tell you that.
Right.
They love fulfilling them, even though it might be living with a difficult alcoholic for their whole life.
Right. I mean,
So,
that almost sounds like a past life soul, that they knew each other in a past life. What do
yeah.
you ever see that, sometimes we just know, we meet somebody, and you just feel like, I know you, but I've never met you before. And I always attribute that it must be a past life. It's almost like the soul recognizes the other soul, and why we then, why do we get married to somebody or have children, and then we have specific children that may have been part of our past lives that we're now switching roles or coming in to set things straight. Do you ever see things like that?
Absolutely. Often. Yes, often. I'm just thinking, yes, some of them, like some are struggling. When I was a psychologist, people were struggling, but and they'd come in and I would wonder why they would want to stay in the relationship. And I didn't really understand it so well then, because I would talk to them about it, well, are you going to be happy there? But they wanted to stay anyway. They just wanted to stay. And my mother did that. She stayed with my father. He was a difficult man, a very charming man, but not a very wholesome man. And he was an alcoholic too. And she stayed with him right till the end, till he passed. And then after he passed, she started remembering all the things that she had to clear up. And she was in her 70s by then, well into her 70s by then. So, I see this too, where people will want to fulfill their purpose. And that's obviously an agreement that they've made before they've come. And yes, of course, they've known them. Otherwise, the glue wouldn't be there, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you ever feel like or see cases where, let's say a couple gets married and that, let's say, I'm just gonna make this up. So like the wife was married to the husband before, but in a past life, the husband may have killed that wife. But then
Yes,
in this
yes, yes.
life, the woman is coming back to sets things straight, put up boundaries, and not let that person manipulate them again in this life. Do you ever
Yeah,
see things like that?
definitely that happens quite a bit too.
Mm-hmm.
They, it's funny, but it seems that when you've had a life where there's been violence and murder, and that seems to connect you even more deeply. Well, I suppose it would. It connects you more deeply to that person because of the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, and they will come back and then work through it. And sometimes that's why they will be leaving the relationship,
Mm-hmm.
that because of that. And even though they may be soulmates, I can remember one woman who said, no, I've fulfilled the contract with him. Yes, we are soulmates, but he's just on a different path and I've done what I needed to do
Mm-hmm.
this lifetime, and I'm going to leave and I need to get on with my life. So yes, that does happen, definitely, even with people who call themselves or get the message that they're quite deeply soul related. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's really fascinating how entangled we are with the people that we meet in this life. We might have a past life with them, and that's why we're struggling with certain things or things aren't working out because we're really cleaning up the past life issues in this life.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's right. That's what happens.
Yeah.
And yes, yes,
Do
I
you ever
agree.
see when there is incest in families? Do you ever do you ever have cases like that, and that it could be related to a past life where those people actually were lovers, or something happened in a past life and then in this life it causes that incest to happen? Ever seen
Look,
anything like that?
yeah, I haven't seen that very specifically, but I've been a victim of incest myself and my family, and so I do attract. Obviously, I would attract. I've worked through that, so I attract a lot of people who have had sexual abuse,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a bit shocking how many people have had sexual abuse who come to see me. Women who come to see me. Um, I haven't seen that very specifically in a past life that I can remember at the moment. I don't know why, actually, because that I know that happened. I
Right.
know there's a relationship there. Maybe I haven't healed that bit yet.
Right, it's coming.
maybe, maybe that's still there to do. But I have had people who've. I'm just thinking of one woman people who've gone dark and then have had. I'll give you an example. Had a woman who was attracted to narcissists Well, it wasn't anything about incest in her history, but she came in and she was very nervous, and she said she had a feeling she might have killed somebody, and she had a feeling that she might have been raped. Now, the guide said, I said, the rape seemed to be okay. And I said, do we need to go into that? And they said, no. Sometimes you do need to go into the details of a past life, and sometimes you don't. But they said, yes, it happened, but we don't need to do that. That was great. But so she wants to know why she's being attracted to people who are like narcissistic. And it turns out that she had been raped in a previous life. That was an important part of that. And then she'd developed a lot of anger and hate. And so then she goes to she goes to this other past life where she's in the West, the American West, and a little town, and she's got a partner there, and he's a very big man, and he backhands her when she says something that she didn't like. Well, she's pretty tough herself. So she's really angry and annoyed with him. So we go to another scene, see what's going to happen. And what's happening is she's sitting on top of him, this great big man, and she's just cut his throat. There's blood everywhere. And she thinks, I said, so how are you feeling? She says, well, I'm feeling relieved that I've killed him, but she said, now I've got to do something about this body. So she ends up digging a big, deep hole in the backyard of this property they're on and burying him, walking around the town, and people looking at her funny because the husband has just disappeared.
Right.
Moves to another town and has a pleasant life. And on a deathbed, I said, how are you feeling? Like, how are you feeling about you killed somebody? She said, well, I've had a good life. So she went to the light, and I thought, well, that seems like that's all resolved and okay. And then I thought, well, we haven't worked out why she's still attracted to narcissists. So I said, oh, we need to ask your guide, why are you attracted to narcissists? And the guide said, you're holding on to regret. Now, she wasn't aware that she was doing that, but she's in the trance. And so then she identifies with that. Yes, she said, yes, you did. And it was killing that man in the past life. And I'm sort of thinking, well, she was happy about it. How come it's still an issue? And there was a difference because that's who she is as a human, and that's who she is as a soul. And he said, it's not your true nature to kill. We are love. Like, so see, we're love. And so if we do those dark things, we're going to feel a dissonance there. And so that's what was happening. And so she was still in that heavy, dark sort of place of being shut down, and she recognized that. So when she remembered that, and she started recalling her life, current life, and how she didn't really connect well with her children. So she wasn't really connecting. She wasn't really connected to her higher self. She wasn't feeling authentic. And so that was when that started to change, and she had a lot of grief from not being connected. So that's how people change in the trance. They start reconnecting, often through going through something dark, and then reconnecting. And there's a lot of tears, of course. And they then start remembering how they've been. And it's a bit like the near-death experiences when you see people have reviews. It's like then they start going through a review, and they're open to feeling how the other person felt. So that's what happens in the regressions, and how that's why they come out of them often really liberated and quite excited and going in a different path.
Yeah. Do you find that people have a trend of past lives, that they're, a similar soul in many different lives?
Well, they make the same mistakes in that.
You're
They
right.
might be,
Or that, you're a psychologist and you're helping people.
oh yes.
Would you have been a soul in many past lives in the same kind of role?
Well, my immediate previous lives, I know I have been helpful to people, but I was also in wars. I was in 3 wars, unfortunately, always on the losing side. Doesn't really matter which side you're on.
Right.
It's just the experience it's about. Yes, I was in the Civil War, I was in the First World War, and I was in the Second World War. And the First and Second World War was one life, and I was a German, actually. So just really powerful lives of learning. That was my experience. So yes, I've been a warrior in a lot of lives. So that's gone through. But then somewhere along the line, I've also shifted into this. That was my dark path. Then I've shifted into being a healer. And I think that's because of, like you said earlier, all that karma that I've been carrying, obviously. But in the previous last life, I died very disillusioned with what the German side, with Hitler and the Nazis, and ended up in Stalingrad and just died in the snow, gave up actually. Yeah. So yes, we do seem to have a theme that often runs through us, but I think maybe we're all like, we're love. So at our deep core, where we're starting to get into our core, we are love. So we're creative as well. And I think that's who we truly are. So once we start moving out of that heaviness into the light, we are going to do things, like being a scientist would be thing, but still helping, isn't it? Like they've all got an element of help in them.
Now, so, you even have memories of being, living in a different country at a different time. So when we look at the world today and what we see, all the wars and race and hate towards different ethnicities, I mean, we've all been all the different ethnicities and races ourselves. So it's almost like we're hating ourselves in a way, because we're all just really connected and we're all just one. We're just these souls that come back with different missions and different lives. How do you look at that, or what can we do to teach people that we're just really all the same?
Well, that's I'm glad you asked that question, because what I see people demonstrating or being violent towards other people, it's not helpful at all in terms of the evolution of the human generally, but it's also part of their journey. So what do we do if we want to change? I think it's pretty straightforward. What we want to see in the world, we need to change in ourselves. So, if we're feeling hate and anger, we're just adding to the hate and anger. And so that's not the answer. The answer is to look at ourselves and get to peace within ourselves. But when we're walking around feeling peaceful and accepting of others where they are, which is really love. So loving others where they are, they might be angry or whatever they are, and we accept that they're on their journey, like that guide Joy said about feeling joyful about them being on their journey, even if they're going down, because they're creating that. They are creating it, and they haven't realized that yet. So the answer is to find our own peace, and whatever you need to do that. My clients obviously need, or are brought to me and need to do the work I do. Others, and like that podcast you did with Father Nathan, he was helping the stuck souls. I've got clients who do that similar sort of work. So we will help and it will change, but the only way it's really going to change is by us changing ourselves, and then we'll have opportunities to help others who resonate with us. So that's it. Yeah, it's simple and as difficult as that.
Right. So we need some magic here in the United States, right? So our country has become so divided over the past couple of years, right? It's almost like two camps, and people almost can't see beyond it instead of, creating understanding and work together.
I
So
think it's a journey for America actually at the moment, because I've got a lot of colleagues, I've got a lot of friends and colleagues over there. I was there for 2 months last year, and who are doing the same work as I'm doing. And yeah, they're feeling a bit of despair about it all too, about what's happening. But we can't let ourselves get caught in that. We just got to see the light all the time.
yeah.
And it'll change for the better as time goes. Yeah, there is a lot of division there. I follow America very closely. I've got a sister who lives there too.
Yeah. But exactly like you said, we just have to keep the light shining, and the more people work on themselves, that's what I tell people. For every person I heal, that contributes to healing the world, because once you can heal a person or you heal their past life, whatever it is that ails them, we're all connected, we're all one in the end. So that our own frequency changes when we heal, we become somebody different. And so we can tune into that love that we do carry inside of us in a different way. But then when we meet our family and friends and go into the grocery store, we resonate, differently with other people around us, because we created that healing within us. So it is a
Absolutely.
beautiful, for everybody that steps up to the plate, that works on themselves. Because I tell my clients, all you can do is heal yourself. You cannot heal your partner, your children, your sisters, but you can heal yourself, because you're really only in charge of your life. They all have their incarnations and the things they have to work on.
Absolutely. And free will is definitely a given, because unless we give permission to our guides even to help us
Mm-hmm.
or ask for help, they won't interfere, because that
Yeah.
that free will is sacrosanct.
Yes. I tell
So
people that too. You have to ask if you want help, you got to ask for it. They're not just going to show up. You have to.
you do have to ask. That's so true too. Do you know, every day I say this little mantra. I say, I am love, I am loved, and I am loving.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that every day to remind that's who I really am. And I think that seems to help keep you on track so you don't fall into any darkness.
Right. It's very true. You also mentioned something about people coming from other planets. Do you have any experience with working with people that have memories of being on other planets, or?
Yes, yes, it does happen. Um, that not in great detail though, because most of the focus is on the Earth,
Mm-hmm.
but it does help when you're looking at their history,
Mm-hmm.
that they've come from other planets. And then I've had people who've come from other planets and said, I hate it here, I don't want to be here anymore. And they're very light sort of
Yeah.
people, except they've got pulled into that trauma of that's here on the Earth, the darker energies. And I've said to them, well, why did you come in the first place? And we find out they said it looked so beautiful. Earth looks so beautiful, but it's not quite as beautiful. So we just have to get them straight and understand. That's what my book is about, really, understanding how the Earth system works,
Mm-hmm.
so that you don't have to feel so bad about the place. Like, that's what I'm trying to do with that book, is give all these examples of different people and their journeys, so that when you read it, you can start to understand that it's a journey and there's light at the end of it, and people go down and then they come up. So that's what that book, Lost Soul, Wise Soul. So it's being lost as a soul, and that's actually gives you the wisdom when you come out of it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's called Lost Soul, Wise Soul. Yeah, so I do have people from other planets, and that does happen, but it's not a common theme. It's just a bit of information, because most of our focus is here, trying to
Mm-hmm.
work out how we live here and how we cope
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and
Do you think
find.
that we, choose to come to Earth or come to a different planet?
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm sure we choose. And there's a lot of people who are choosing at the moment, they say. It seems that there's a lot of younger souls coming, and some of them are getting quite lost. And that's a concern, that they are getting lost.
And do you feel that there's also other souls coming in to sort of save the planet?
Well, that's these young souls. They're supposed to be lifting up. They're
Mm-hmm.
coming in fairly, well, when I say young, maybe they're not young, but they're clean. They're
Mm-hmm.
clean. They're not carrying a lot of karmic stuff. But then some of them are getting caught. So I don't know. I'm sure something will happen to help awaken them
Mm-hmm.
to understanding that you can be here and still be loving. Like, you don't have to go get hooked into all of that negativity. That's
Mm-hmm.
an option on planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's why you're doing this work that you're doing, the podcast and the work you do. That's why I'm doing it. We
Mm-hmm.
want to be there to help let
Yeah.
people know you don't have to go down into those dark places,
Right.
and
Yeah,
you can get out.
right. It's a choice in the end. And,
Yeah.
we do have free will and choose the way we want to lead our lives, except for, things that are in the movie script that we're supposed to, that we signed up for.
Well, that's
Um,
right. That's right.
right. Yeah. And do
Yeah.
you ever see, I mean, sometimes when I work with people, I just know I'll look at my client and I say, you're the one that came in to break the cycle of some sort in the family and to
Yeah.
create the healing. And typically, there's, lots of different traumatic experiences running through the whole family. And
Yeah.
they're the one person that are working on creating healing. Do you see that too?
Yes, I do. I see it in my own family, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
I see it. I see that we're breaking some of the patterns because there's been a lot of patterns from the past.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. That ancestral line is another line. Like I think I've only got one or two cases, ancestral cases in that book, but there are a couple where, yeah, there is an ancestral. It's very complex, isn't it? Like it's
Yeah.
past life and ancestral life, and
Mm-hmm.
some of your past lives prepare you for the work that you might be going to do down an ancestral line. It's
Mm-hmm.
all very complicated, and we're gradually unraveling it as we get further along.
Yeah. No, exactly. In your view, what is the secret to living a life of joy and fulfillment on the planet Earth?
Yes. Well, in a word, it's what we said before about it's really about acceptance, I think. It's about love and acceptance, which is really the same thing. So that when you've got a challenge coming up, that you can resist it, and that's going to make life harder. You're going to get some lessons, but eventually you're going to need to accept it. So I think what I've learned to where I am now is to let go and surrender and accept whatever's happening and deal with it, deal with it in whatever way you can, in a positive way. To grieve, you might grieve. If something sad's happened, you grieve, breathe it, and then until it lets you go. And then when it lets you go, you feel lighter. So that is the secret that I know. The less resistance,
Mm-hmm.
the less rejection, the more you can accept, the better. Sometimes you do have to stand up, though, and say something. That depends. But I'm not saying not to stand up and
Mm-hmm.
speak your truth. But that's how you become your authentic self, I
Mm-hmm.
think, by being in touch with your connection with what you've got to do. And, yeah, clearing up what you've got in the past that's pulling you away from what you really want.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's the secret. Love and acceptance, I guess.
Right. No, that's beautiful advice. And before we wrap up, how can people learn more about you or work with you?
Well, I'll just tell you, my website is A Life Between Lives Regression. So it's life between lives, plural, regression.com.au, because I'm in Australia, so it's .com.au. They can get in contact with me through that website. Also, I do a podcast called Exploring Past Lives with Karen Joy. And that's growing in popularity quite a bit because people are hearing some of the stories that I haven't been able to tell you here about from themselves after they've done a regression or had a past life or remembered past lives. So they're probably two. The books I have one is Other Lives, Other Realms. That's my first book I wrote. The second one is Lost Soul, Wise Soul. So they're on Amazon and other booksellers around.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Right. So I'll make sure we put the links in the podcast notes so that people can just click on it and find you easily on the website and look for her books. We typically put links in for the books as well, so people can find your books easily.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah. And so it's been such a joy to have you on as a guest on the podcast today. So thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom with the listeners.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you. And yeah, I just want to say I love your podcast. What I've watched so far too. You're so easy and sweet and everything. Just a lovely energy. So
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much.
As we conclude this episode, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude for your presence within my community. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe, comment, like, and share this podcast episode. Join my free newsletter in the show notes and receive new podcast episodes delivered right to your inbox. If you resonate with the interconnectedness of mind, body, and soul, and are motivated to embark on a journey of personal healing, I invite you to connect with me at drlotte.com. Together, we can pave a path towards transformative healing in your own life.